What do we mean when we talk about assertiveness? I think the best way to describe this is when you look at the two extremes, right? We have people that are extremely aggressive, they are domineering, they're intimidating, they tend to shout, they raise their voice when they stand in, they want people to follow them. We call those kind of people aggressive. And then we have the complete opposite of people who are passive. People who tend to be timid, they're very quiet, they're very docile. You know, in Swahili we say, wametulia kama maji ya mtungi. Now the challenge of being on the both extremes that you have difficulty in interacting with people. The most ideal and balanced place to be is where you're assertive. It means you're respectful enough to know when you need to be aggressive, when you need to raise your voice, when you need to defend yourself. And also at the same time, you're respectful enough to know when you need to pull back, be quiet, and listen. Assertiveness is a very important technique that we teach when it comes to customer training. And of course, this is with regard to managing people, because you tend to get people who can be very forceful and very intimidating. Now, the most important technique I want to talk about today, in fact, 4 techniques I want to talk about today, allow you to be able to become better at being assertive. Now, the first challenge I would say often we have sometimes is when we have somebody who doesn't just want to listen. You know, you keep telling them something and they want to keep arguing and arguing and arguing and arguing. One of the techniques that we advise that you can be able to use is what we call a broken record. Why is it called a broken record? If you remember, we used to have the LP player that would go round and round and round. When it was broken, that pin or the needle would play in the same place over and over and over and over again. We use broken record when you want to pass on a message or a communication and you want to just show the person that you're speaking to that, by the way, I'm sticking by my message. And I remember a perfect example that I was told once, you know, and this was it's a true story actually, of a kid that, you know, had friends who were the wrong type of friends, as you would say, and they would insist, why don't we go and try this? You know, they were trying to get the friend to try on something that was illegal. You know, especially young men that are trying on some of these drugs, for example. And I remember the child would be asked, why don't you, by the friends, why don't you try? And he stuck and said, you know what, I am not going to do this. I am not going to do this. And the more they tried to tell him, why don't you, know, it's just a one-off thing, why don't you try it? He said, no, I am not going to do this. And he repeated that almost 20 times. And the friends gave up. You know, that's what we call a broken record. It's a very useful technique that you can be able to use to remain firm, you know, with what you want to communicate without, of course, being challenged or being convinced to move otherwise. It's a very important assertive technique. Maybe you could argue it is useful for those who tend to be passive, but broken record is a technique that you can be able to use and allows you to remain firm with your communication. The second technique is what we call fogging, and most of you are familiar with the fog. You know, most of the time when you travel in the morning, especially in high altitude areas and there's a fog, you can hardly see the road. It doesn't often mean that the road has moved or that the place you're going to has moved. The fog is really something that creates a sign of invisibility, but you can be able to go through. We say in fogging, you sort of can allow the person who is trying to be intimidative, they are trying to shout at you. You create what is called a fog bank. You know, it means that you will listen, but you remain the judge of your own actions. You know, in fogging, it doesn't matter when somebody comes in at you with a very strong wording that, you know, again, sometimes could even be abusive. So what you do is that you don't necessarily get defensive, okay? And I want to make it very clear here. I'm not saying that you become passive. You remain a judge of your own actions. So fogging allows you to be able to listen and decide, by the way, is there anything truthful about this criticism? And if there's nothing, that's me. You know, we've often been told that, you know, sticks and stones may break your bones, but words will not. And I guess that best describes what fogging is. The third technique I want to talk about today is what we call negative inquiry. Because sometimes somebody can come to you because they have a justified complaint, and it could be a customer. So what you do is to try and sit and understand. In negative inquiry, you try and find out what could have gone wrong. What did I not do correctly that may have upset you? So you try and understand, and by understanding, you then become in a better position to correct and say, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know that that hurt you. So negative inquiry is a technique that you can be able to use to become more assertive. And sometimes, by the way, you can also have something called negative assertion. In negative assertion, it also allows you to be able to look at that particular complaint that somebody is giving you, and you know what? You know at the back of your mind, I don't think that that is really true, but I can see it seems to have upset you, and you know, I totally understand, and of course you would go ahead and apologize. I think the most important thing we are talking about when it comes to assertiveness is being able to interact with people, is being able to manage that circumstance where even when there's a challenge, you know, you can still be able to remain firm. And if you look at the 4 techniques we've talked about, from broken record, where you still maintain the core communication of what you're saying, from fogging, where yes, the person can come and shout at you, but you remain the judge of your own action. So you're the one that decides what your response will be. To negative inquiry, where you actually say, by the way, maybe you could be right. There could be some criticism that could be justified. Let me try and understand more. So tell me what exactly could have gone wrong. To negative assertion, you know, where you do appreciate that, okay, fine. You know, it seems to have upset you, and you know, I'm sorry about that. And again, at the end of the day, you sort of have a much more better interaction. Why is assertiveness important? Because I think it allows you to be able to focus on what really matters the most, which is communication with people. When we have either aggressiveness or passiveness, as I said, there never really is a balance. One person will often be domineering, or the other person will often be on the receiving end, which means that that is not a balanced communication, and you cannot have the same 2 people at par, so to put it. So I think developing assertiveness techniques is very important. It allows you to become better at learning how to manage customers, especially difficult customers. We've just talked about them also, and it allows the person also to develop skills that help them to become far much competent. Now, do I think that assertiveness can help you grow from a career perspective? Yes, I would. It's also clear that people that tend to be successful tend to be assertive in life. There are people that tend to know when they need to step up, they know when they need to step down, you know. And it doesn't mean that you are sort of lowering yourself when you're stepping down. It means you understand perfectly the situation, and you know when you need to be able to defend yourself, you need to be able to raise your voice, but it doesn't mean that you squarely inhabit on that aggressive, housing, if I may use that particular word. So I want to end by saying that assertiveness is a very important technique, and I hope that as you again go through this video and join us in our trainings, you can be able to become far much more better, and of course help improve your assertiveness skills. Thank you.